Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Welcome to the March GFM Talk session. The purpose of GFM Talks is to welcome colleagues from across the GFM and schools within our local area so that colleagues can share their practice, their experiences and their thoughts within an educational context. Here at the GFM, we recognise the importance of sharing and we value learning from one another so that we can change attitudes, develop our outlook, as that will enable us to best serve those within our community. And our agenda here at GFM Talks is to create a safe forum in which we can share, learn and speak debate and all conversation. I'm very grateful to Luke Mulhall, who is speaking at this afternoon's GFM Talks, and the title of Luke's talks is Redesigning Schooling for Hybrid Teaching. This is the first GFM Talks that's been recorded in virtual reality. Really grateful to Luke for trying this out for us, and his talk is going to explore the ways that we can adapt existing classroom spaces and design new ones so that we remain flexible as we think about a redesign of schooling in the future. Luke's going to pose a series of questions throughout his talk, and he's also going to reflect on the learning journey that we've all been on since the first period of school closure a year ago this month. The main question being, how do we design spaces that can improve a hybrid learning, the hybrid learning and hybrid teaching experience for all learners to ensure that technology does not get in the way of teaching? So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Luke in virtual reality. Thanks very much, Luke.
Hello, and welcome to this first live VR Google Talk. Now this afternoon we're going to talk about hybrid learning, what it means, more importantly how we define a hybrid learning space. And we're going to do it in the context of VR because later on in the talk we'll talk a bit about how VR might lend itself to hybrid learning. So here we are. Let's start off with a year ago. Now, a year ago, we were all in school, and then COVID struck and we all went home. And we had to start making do, we had to start using what was around us. So we started our journey online, and often we found things that we had at home, maybe additional monitors, maybe it was extra screens, visualizers, things like that, to enable us to deliver online lessons. And we started a journey. Within the GFM, we were quite keen that we look towards how we might deliver lessons live online. So it's quite important for us to have the right equipment. But at that stage, we didn't really know what the right equipment was. We were all learning together. And so you can see here a make-do setup where we've connected multiple monitors. We found a basket to lift the camera up to eye height, just to make things a little bit better. When we looked at other schools too, we had a look at what they were doing to adjust their environments. So we can see this one here, where they've taken a regular classroom situation and they've adapted it. The teacher, you can see, is over at the far side. Still, sat at her table, she's got her computer there. But this hybrid environment meant she became fixed to her station. You can see the boards in use there, and they've joined a Google Meet or some sort of virtual online hangout, so these 4 students in the class can join their classmates virtually. But it became a situation that was difficult to manage because the teacher was largely moved to her chair so she could then see the students online, the students could see her. So this environment worked and it was adapted, but it wasn't ideal, it wasn't a desirable situation. When we look to other schools, this teacher here, let's just move that out of the way. This teacher here hasn't got students in her classroom at the same time, but she's adapted her workspace. She's found some lighting that she's set up, she's got additional screens, and she's moved to a totally online learning environment. This is a good setup. Students can see her well, but it's not ideal. And it's very much an adaptation of what the current space is. Now, within the GFM, we tried things ourselves too. Students tried things too. Again, adapting what we currently had. Everything was about trial and error, experimentation. You can see here a setup where we've taken a laptop, we've connected it to a mobile phone, joined both things, and you can see some really good quality pictures there in terms of the food. The angle was good. You can also see the student there presenting herself so this can be seen at the same time within a meeting. So these are all our stepping stones as we try things out. We work out what makes a really good online hybrid learning solution. Now, as we continued to adapt and evolve, we learnt new things. We realised just sitting down all the time was quite unnatural. When we present, we often stand up, as I am with you now. We found by having multiple cameras or using tripods, positioning them in different places, maybe in the classroom with post-it notes, maybe having additional lighting, we could produce much better effects. We used microphones and different cameras to improve the quality of our presentation. And this is all part of that learning journey, where we improved and made minor adaptations that took us one step closer. So how did children find it? Well, maybe we imagined students like this, online, enjoying their learning experience, smiling, engaging with us. What we actually found was students were adapting at the same time too. Often students were using the devices around them, sometimes more than one device, and actually their learning spaces were changing. We have quite a controlled learning environment in school. We spent years developing these spaces to try and make them inspirational, to try and work best for our learners and best for our teaching style. But suddenly children were learning at home, choosing environments and spaces and trying things out. So we need to be considering them at the same time. Now, a question for you. We have things like panel shows, question time, events happening where you've got studio audiences that join with us remotely at home. And these things are set up really well, high quality productions where you can see and hear people. But with these, what you've got is you've got multiple camera people, technicians around you setting these things up. Teachers can't have that all the time. So this can give us some clues and some examples of really good practice to achieve fantastic things. But what can we do as individuals? Well, one thing we can do is we can look to vloggers. Vloggers tend to work on their own. They tend to adapt the technology, choose different tools to meet their needs. So it might be the case that you've got someone in a kitchen positioning their camera on a tripod so it can face the food or face themselves. It may be facing down, up. You might also have a situation where people are out and about, so they're choosing different camera technology that produces really good quality outcomes, but it's also very, very portable. Now, when we look at this, we think about teaching again. Do we define our spaces by the technology? Or do we make the technology fit the spaces? How do we remain adaptable? Traditional classrooms, you can rejig, you can move chairs around, you can move tables around, you can reposition yourself within the space. When you start adding a camera, how do you achieve the same things? Now, at the same time again, let's return to our learners. When we think about children and what they're doing, they're not working in a way currently where you speak and then you listen and then you speak again. E-learning, e-sports, gaming has become huge. And within this, if you ever watch children playing these things, what you'll see is them working together in a team way. You'll see them talking quite naturally, often at the same time, with dialogue going back and forth, discussing different strategies, repositioning themselves, and understanding what's going on. Now, if you give children online tasks to do, if you give them the tools to do this, you'll see exactly the same thing. They don't need a situation where they get told one instruction, they respond, and then they wait for the next. In a classroom situation, you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't make children each take their turn to answer a question and work your way around the room to complete the whole lesson. You'd take quick fire questions, you'd look for the response, you'd look for what children are doing, you'd look to their body language and gestures. You'd gain clues from the different situations. So let me share with you this. So this is one tech company who produced a good visual for this solution. With this one, what you can see is along the back wall, they've set it up so they've got rear-facing projectors. The projectors project the people that are joining the lesson remotely. People in the classroom are positioned in front of them, so they're not distracted by the learners behind them. But this is a very, very traditional setup designed to meet a hybrid learning need. It's quite an adaptable one because actually the projectors that are at the back could be reused and repurposed if students are in the class. Equally, the teacher could reposition themselves facing the back of the room or move around the room. Within this situation, it's a case that perhaps you include different cameras that can rotate to meet the person talking. Position different microphones, whether they're hanging pendant mics or directional microphones to meet the presenter's needs. You can set the room up. But the real advantage of designing rooms like this is they're still very, very flexible. You're not defining one particular place where the presenter has to stand and speak to the class. You can move it around, change it to meet the needs, and then when something different happens, you can adapt again. So, if we were to set up certain spaces, would we make them totally flexible so you can do anything with it? Or would we design them to an extent to meet the needs of that subject? Let's have a look at some different ways we could set up classrooms with cameras so then remote people can join it, and perhaps we can improve it for the people in the lesson too. So first off, a science room. If we have a quick look at this science room, what you can see here is they set up several cameras around the place. One of the advantages of having these cameras is you can get right in close to the experiment, far closer than you might be able to in real life. Is there a big difference between having things pre-recorded or live? The nice thing with a live recording and a setup like this is students can ask questions. The experimentation is real. It's happening right here, right now. You can see what goes right, you can see what goes wrong. But you can be right there in the action with the teacher delivering it that you know. If you're joining this remotely, it's the same experience. Perhaps you move into a design technology environment. Then you can start taking advantage of some of the tools you've got in front of you. Perhaps you're designing things remotely and you start using things like CAD software. Rather than doing it in class or booking an IT lesson, students both in the room and outside can be designing these things. Perhaps they all get emailed to the teacher and printed in 3D and you create some artwork from it. Perhaps you take those models and you start experimenting in virtual reality, moving them around and looking at them. Let's just take a quick example of that. So, in true Blue Peter style, is one I made earlier. So we've taken a model of a ship. With this, we can expand it, we can contract it, we can look around it, we can reposition things, and we can discuss it with our teacher. Let's put that away for now. So, virtual reality can lend itself as an advantage to these situations because it can add an extra dimension to things. And when we have got a hybrid situation where children can't be in the room with us, they can't physically pick things up, perhaps they can interact with them in that way too. And that adds extra depth to what we're doing. Let's consider our food room. Now, a normal food technology class, you try and bring all the students around the teacher so they can see the demonstration, they can see what's going on. When we watch TV chefs cooking, they set the room up in such a way that they get the best possible angles, either of the front and the hand so you can see what they're doing, or top-down views so you can see the food in really close-up detail. You can see the cutting techniques and what's happening from different camera angles. Now, the nice thing with this is we can take flexible technology. Maybe it's literally taking a tripod with a camera downward facing, positioning it where you want. Phones have fantastic camera technology these days, and it's so easy to join these things in. Not only that, they're battery operated too. We can take certain tools we've got and reposition them to make them totally flexible. So designing a hybrid classroom isn't just about how you fix things in place. It's also about considering technology you've already got, how you're going to blend that in. The less fixed things we have, the more flexible it becomes. What additional things like tripods can we add to a teacher's toolkit to make them able to be more adaptable? Now, if we go for 100% remote, what would it make it look like? Now, this is an example from a school in Barcelona, where what they've set up is multiple screens, almost like a TV studio. They've set up some fantastic lighting, but most of all, they've designed it in such a way that you can see every child's face at the same time. All the children can see the teacher really clearly. They can look around the room very, very naturally and get an idea of who's there. So it's a really interesting adaptation of things that already exist but have been taken very quickly to meet the needs of students. Now, we haven't yet touched upon the VR world, and businesses are getting into VR in a huge way. Online meetings like this take place. This meeting that I'm having right now is happening in real time, and I'll take you a little tour around the room in a second, but essentially it's the same experience as having a Zoom meeting, but actually you've got space to move around. You can set things up a bit like setting up a classroom, and there's some additional benefits too. Now, one area that's really grown is the use of VR for hard skill training. Businesses are investing massively. There's no way that you can take people that are untrained and send them under the sea fixing oil rigs, or giving them direct access to a crane, taking them and working on electricity substations. But in VR you can do these things, and people can try these things over and over again. Now, this isn't new. Aircraft simulators have been around for years, but they've always been massive and hugely expensive. Pilots only get a limited time in them because they're in such high demand. But with VR, we've got this opportunity that we can start gamifying learning, giving children the access to the same tools that adults do, allowing them to experience different job types and see what it's like. They can make mistakes and learn from these mistakes and then get better and better at it. Real world work experience. And it's not just hard skills we're looking at. Research has been done to show soft skills can be developed too. And there's a whole range of statistics here that show you that VR-based learning and online learning can be more effective than learning in the classroom. This isn't to say that we should all move everything into VR or everything online. What I'm advocating here is a blended approach where we take the best of different situations and we choose the technologies that best meet the needs. Sometimes picking up a pen or a pencil is the best way to do something. But equally, sometimes putting on a set of VR goggles, taking yourself to a whole new world, can very quickly give you an experience that would take hours to explain or unpick. So let's just look at some of these. PricewaterhouseCoopers have found that learners can learn 4 times faster. Really interestingly, their emotional connection can be 3.5 times greater being in a VR situation. Remember, we can take you from the real world to an experience that would be really hard to replicate otherwise. And then how does this transfer into real life? Well, the blend gets greater. The use of technology and how we interact with it, whether it's VR goggles, whether it's practicing things on computers and then taking it into the real world, is getting greater and greater. Our working remotely over the past few years has changed dramatically how we operate. And so this is just a step. As soon as we take this step and start experiencing different situations, we may choose to change our jobs, change how we want to work. The new Mustang Mach-E, Ford's latest car. All of the training for this, they're doing online. Whether that training is to do with production of the cars, working on the cars, sales techniques to selling the cars, they've taken all this and they've adapted it using Oculus Quest technology So low-cost technology, taking what's there and adapting it. This is far, far cheaper than taking people away on long training events or shipping cars in to practice on them first. Engineers can make mistakes, production engineers can make mistakes too. They can find out and fault find lots of different issues and see how to fix them. So when the real cars get delivered, they're ready to go straight away. And it's not just Ford. VW, BMW, Audi, they're all involved in this too. They're all looking at different ways. One really interesting way is how they're working with customer service. How they look towards the best possible service techniques of modern sales. How to deal with customers and manage client feedback. It's really interesting how you can role play these different situations, find the best techniques, see what happens. And the more we do, the more we can develop the software to take it even further. All of these things, if we bring these down to the classroom too, if we take these to apprentices, then they can learn it as well. So it's a whole world of education that just keeps expanding. So, before I finish up, I'm going to take you on a quick tour around this room. So, what I'm looking at the moment is I'm looking around at a room. Let's just bring the camera a little bit closer so I can take hold of it. So, here's my room at the moment. Now, you can see down here, there's someone watching this presentation. If I wanted to, we could set it up so we had lots of live people joining us at the same time, and I could position that on the back wall. I can even have a quick look at myself to see how I'm presenting in the VR world. And then behind me, you can see I've set up this presentation. Now, because I can take hold of the camera, I can position it anywhere in the room I want. I can add different artifacts. Let's just move that back up. Oh, there we go. Is that a bit better? That's not bad. Maybe let's take it a little bit higher. There we go. So you can see it becomes really, really simple. An interesting way of working. And if we take an approach that it's not all or nothing, how do we mix together the best bits of virtual learning, the best bits of all the online experiences we've learned, all those IT skills that students have picked up recently, and then combine that with the best of knowing how to teach? If we combine these things into a hybrid model, then how do we put all of that together and define the absolute best learning space? Thank you for the time tonight. I hope that's been an interesting talk, and I look forward to seeing different learning opportunities that develop out of this. Thank you.
Huge thanks to Luke there for this afternoon's really interesting and topical GFM talk. Luke began his talk by reflecting on the learning journey that we've all been on for the past year, and he reflected on what we've learnt about remote learning and online teaching, including what we've learnt from engaging in dialogue with other schools. We and our students, we've been on a huge journey of trial and error as we've tried to work out what makes a good online hybrid learning solution. I'm also grateful to Luke for making us think this afternoon about what online learning actually looks like for our pupils and students compared to what we imagined it would look like, because the reality is that the experience is very difficult and our students have been learning about what works for them. Luke posed a series of questions throughout his talk, and a couple struck me in particular. One of those is, what's the difference between a TV studio with a live audience and a hybrid classroom, and the importance that as we think about the redesign of schooling and our teaching and learning spaces, we need to remain adaptable, and importantly, we need to remain flexible with both the technology and the design of the spaces. Luke also encouraged us to think about how do we keep up with the world of gaming and esports, and we really need to think about how our students and pupils engage with e-gaming and esports as well. Finally, the other question that I've been thinking on is, what would a dedicated virtual classroom look like, and how would we use that teaching space? Luke also brought in some of the success that businesses have had and the significant investment that businesses are making in virtual reality. What would it mean to teach in virtual reality? And I'm grateful to Luke as well for linking that to the real world and the impact that that's going to have on careers and potential careers that our students and pupils might go on to do. Should you wish to submit any questions to Luke following tonight's talks, please complete the question submission Google form. You can find the link to that in the email that was sent out from Megan Webb earlier today, and you can submit a question. Any questions submitted will be shared with Luke to answer. If you would like to present at a future GFM Talks, please can you send your details and the title of your talk, including a brief outline of the content of your talk, to talks@gfmat.org, and we'll look to incorporate that into a future programme. Megan Webb will be in touch should she require any more details, and there is the option of presenting a short talk for no longer than 20 minutes, or time can be allocated for colleagues wishing to present a longer talk. Huge thanks again to Luke Mulhall for this afternoon's really interesting and topical talk. Please do look out for further opportunities to engage in the ongoing dialogue across the GFM about the redesign of schooling. It's important that everyone realises that their voice is valued, and we're keen to hear your thoughts and ideas. All that remains for me to say is have a good evening, take care, stay safe and well. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.